I already made a video about mixed marriages or inter-ethnic marriages in former Yugoslavia. But I didn't discuss who was marrying whom. Serb enemies like to accuse Serbs of being very open to mixed marriages. This was supposedly a Serbian tactic to assimilate other ethnic groups. It is true that Serbs are not obsessed with ethnic purity. But Serbs were not more open to mixed marriages than other ethnic groups in former Yugoslavia. Let's see the numbers. All information I use in this video comes from the 2009 essay. Ethnic intermarriage and social cohesion. What can we learn from Yugoslavia? Jaron Smits. Jaron Smits is professor of economic and human development at Radboud University in the Netherlands. Social cohesion theory is tested using data on ethnic intermarriage in former Yugoslavia. Before the disintegration of Yugoslavia, the proportion of marriages outside the own ethnic group was generally low, but in this respect, large differences among the groups existed. The proportion of mixed marriages with a Serbian partner was much higher among the Montenegrins and Hungarians than among the Muslim Slovenes or Albanians. The findings are largely in line with the predictions of social cohesion theory that intermarriage reduces the probability of violent conflict among social groups. In 1950, there were 8.6% mixed marriages in Yugoslavia. In 1990, there were 13.5% mixed marriages in Yugoslavia. These percentages are considered low by foreign scholars. I see them as rather high, considering ethnic animosities. According to Smits, Serbs were more likely to marry Montenegrins or Hungarians than Muslim Slovenes or Albanians. During the 1990s, Serbs had no conflict with Montenegrins and Hungarians. The social cohesion theory says that mixed marriages reduce the probability of a conflict. I wouldn't agree with this theory, at least not in case of Yugoslavia. I will use Serbs and Roma as an example. There is no social closeness between Serbs and Roma, and intermarriages are rare. But there is no conflict between Serbs and Roma. During Kosovo War, Albanians often attacked Roma because Roma and Serbs were seen as allies. Thanks to current war in Ukraine, we know mixed marriages do not prevent conflicts. There was a huge number of intermarriages between Russians and Ukrainians. Besides proportions of mixed marriages, long-linear parameters are presented. These parameters show that percentages not always give a good indication of the social distances among groups. The boundaries of the largest ethnic groups, the Serbians and Croatians, were less close than their rather low intermarriage rates suggested. The social distance between the Hungarians and the Serbians, on the other hand, was larger than expected on the basis of their intermarriage rates. The findings stress the importance of including information on ethnically mixed marriages into models of ethnological monitoring and early warning systems for ethnic conflicts. Serbs and Hungarians are not socially close. Serbs are Slavs and Orthodox Christians, Hungarians are Finno-Ugric and Catholics Protestants. Finno-Ugric group includes Finns, Baltic people and Hungarians. It is debatable how socially close Serbs and Croats were. It is hard to measure the social closeness. A person cannot choose his/her schoolmates, neighbors, or co-workers. In Tito's Yugoslavia, people were afraid of being labeled as nationalists. So they often pretended they liked other ethnic groups around them. This explains why former friends and neighbors turned against one another so easily in the 1990s. Smits is interested in how to predict ethnic wars based on the number of intermarriages. Because the Serbians played a central role in most of the violent conflicts, special attention is paid to the mixed marriages in which one of the partners has the Serbian nationality. There is a huge mistake in Smits' paper. I assume he made it because he is a native speaker of Serbo-Croatian. Non-Serbs in Yugoslavia use the term Serbians to refer only to Serbs living in Serbia. Serbs living outside Serbia were never called Serbians, just Serbs. As a result, Serbs stopped using the term Serbians, Srbijanci, because it was dividing people into Serbs and Serbians. Non-Serbs often see Serbs and Serbians as separate ethnic groups. By the way, is this just misspelling or well insult? South slaves. Smith explains how intermarriages build strong bonds between families. Sorry, but that cannot be further from truth. Many mixed marriages in Yugoslavia led to breaking the families apart. Yugoslavia had strong patriarchal society in which woman was submissive. Woman would take her husband's last name, accept his religion, and be assimilated into his ethnic group. She was seen as lost to her biological family. Very rarely, families of the future wives gave blessing to mixed marriages. The husband's family was more likely to accept the mixed marriage because the woman was seen as gained. Before the start of our analysis, it is difficult to say how large the number of percentage of mixed marriages should be to get a substantial reduction of the probability of violent conflicts among ethnic groups. We have seen that 13.4% of mixed marriages was not enough to prevent Yugoslav wars. We cannot say if wars would have been avoided with 30% of mixed marriages. The situation in Yugoslavia was unique in several ways. Many areas had no clear ethnic majority. Ethnic minorities living in Yugoslavia were not recent migrants. Slavs came to the Balkans in 7th century AD, 1,400 years ago. So it is wrong to compare Yugoslavia to migrant countries like Canada or Australia. Another important structural factor in spatial segregation, we cannot expect many marriages between the Slovenes in the north of Yugoslavia and the Macedonians in the south. But even if the geographical distances are small, there may be spatial segregation. For example, if in a certain region some villages are solely inhabited by Albanians and other villages are solely inhabited by Serbians. Not to mention religious segregation and language segregation. Albanians hated being part of Yugoslavia, so they refused to learn to speak Serbo-Croatian language fluently. Albanians did have Serbo-Croatian language lessons at school, but they spoke it terribly. I think it was on purpose. For his analysis, Smith used the 1981 population census and compared it to data gathered in 1962, 1971, 1980, and 1989. Yugoslavia had a huge number of micro-ethnic groups, so Smith decided to focus only on 8 biggest ethnic groups. We distinguish between 8 ethnic groups: Montenegrins, Croatians, Macedonians, Muslims, Slovenians, Serbians, Albanians, and Hungarians. What about Yugoslavs? The category Yugoslavs was rather heterogeneous, and its size and composition changed much in the period under study. For this reason, we do not consider this group as a separate ethnic group in our analysis. The number of Yugoslavs peaked at 5.4% in 1981. The major problem is that people declaring as Yugoslavs were often people with complicated ethnic background. Removing them from analysis is problematic, but I do understand why Smith did it. Yugoslavs, a separate ethnic group, were just forming and were not stable. Personally, I think they peaked in 1981 due to Tito dying in 1980. Many people in Yugoslavia chose to declare as Yugoslavs in 1981 as a way to show solidarity with Tito's legacy. In 1991, the percentage of Yugoslav almost halved from 5.4% to 3%. This was a result of financial and political crisis. Smith made this graphic. The purple color represents marriages between members of the same ethnic group. This means that most ethnic groups in Yugoslavia had similar percentage of mixed marriages. Serbs did not have the highest percentage of mixed marriages. This honor or dishonor goes to Montenegrins and Hungarians. 22.3% of Montenegrins and 17.6% of Hungarians were in mixed marriages. Why? Montenegro is a very small country with too many rocky mountains. Huge number of Montenegrins had to leave Montenegro in search of education or jobs. Many moved to Serbia, but some went to Croatia, Bosnia, Slovenia. This led to more mixed marriages. Hungarians live in province Vojvodina, which is a very diverse area. As a result, it's not strange to see mixed marriages in Vojvodina. In 1981, 8.6% of the married Croatians had a partner from another ethnic group. About 4% of them had a Serbian partner. That means that only about 1 in 25 Croatians was connected via a marital tie with a Serbian. Still, this is rather much compared to the Muslims and the Albanians. Of the Muslims, more than 96% was married within their own group, and only 1.1% had a Serbian partner. And the social closure of the Albanians was even stronger. Of them, more than 98% was married within their own group, and only 0.4% with a Serbian partner. This means that in 1981, no more than 1 in 90 of the married Muslims and 1 in 250 of the married Albanians had a partner with the Serbian nationality. Bosnian Muslims and Albanians are very close communities due to their Muslim religion. It would be interesting to see the number of marriages between Bosnian Muslims and Albanians. The Montenegrins and the Hungarians, on the other hand, married relatively much with a Serbian partner. About 1 in 6 marrying Montenegrins and 1 in 7 marrying Hungarians did so in the decades before the disintegration of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia also had an unknown number of people in unregistered unions. We have terms unwed wife, nevenčana supruga, and unwed husband, nevenčan muž. One of the funniest expressions is divlji brak, English wild marriage, for common law unions. Yugoslav law did not recognize such unions, so no one bothered to register them. It's hard to say how common wild marriages were. I know quite a few examples of people living in such marriages. One of these wild marriages would have been considered as mixed marriage between Serb man and Polish woman. They lived together for 40 years but never married because they were hardline communists and saw marriage as bourgeoisie garbage. The changes over time in the tendency to marry a Serbian partner are not very spectacular. Among the Croatians, this tendency decreases somewhat. Among the Muslims, it increases somewhat, but in general, the figures are rather stable. This indicates that in the decades before the disintegration of Yugoslavia, no large changes took place in the social distances between the Serbians and the other ethnic groups. Smith is right. There was no drastic social change in Yugoslavia before the wars. This goes against common anti-Serb claim that ethnic groups in Yugoslavia were close and friendly until Serbs destroyed the harmony. This graphic confirms that nothing spectacular was happening with the mixed marriages. Tito's propaganda used to claim that the number of mixed marriages skyrocketed. This gave wrong impression that mixed marriages were more common than they actually were. This graphic shows the number of mixed marriages with Serb partner. We can also notice change between 1980 and 1989. The 1980s saw a rise of nationalism among all ethnic groups in Yugoslavia. Non-Serb nationalism often focused on hating Serbs. Marrying a Serb became less appealing. In the next video, I will focus on how much mixed marriages were reduced as a result of Yugoslav wars.